Vampire Hunter D has gained a bit of a reputation over the years for being kind of bad. While there is a fair bit of jank to a lot of things, I don't feel this entirely ruins the experience. Overcoming that jank takes a bit of work, but there's definitely a lot of good here, and a lot of interesting mechanics to play around with. The game starts with probably one of the most awesome openings I have ever seen. It's incredibly rad, and has a great animation style. When you finally gain control though, that feeling is taken away and you start fighting with the movement almost immediately. If you're walking, the movement isn't too bad, but the running makes things a bit more sensitive than I would like. It's very easy to overstep or fall off platforms when you don't mean to. Anytime you need to line yourself up with something, holding L1 to walk is almost a necessity. The melee combat is where things start heating up a bit. You can perform multiple sword slashes, attack while jumping, sidestep, backstep, and even draw your sword while running, and this makes for a pretty engaging set of fighting mechanics. The problem, however, is that the power of your swings, and I'm pretty sure even the amount of swings you can do in a combo, is tied to your VP gauge at the top. The higher the gauge, the stronger you are. And what's really cool is when your gauge is closer to being full, you'll swing with such conviction that you'll start slicing enemies in half, and this is always cool. You have the ability to block with your cape and also cast various forms of magic. You can heal yourself to full or use an attack spell. You also have the ability to inhale weakened enemies into your hand to restore your magic. Yes, that's right, I said inhale into your hand. It's weird, I know, but D has a symbiotic hand that talks to him and allows him to cast magic. Dude's pretty useful. You might even say handy, because he'll give you hints about where to go whenever you progress a bit, and even breaks the fourth wall a couple of times to be a bit cheeky. You also have some sub-weapons at your disposal and a ton of recovery items. I didn't end up using a lot of the sub-weapons just due to the fact that healing and inhaling is so much more useful, but things like wooden stakes and flash grenades are extremely useful if used right. I hear a lot of people complain about the sword ladies, myself included at first, until I started using sub-weapons on them. This makes a lot of the frustrating parts of combat a bit more palatable compared to using only your sword. You have to out-jank the jank if you're going to get ahead. All of these things together play out in a kind of give-and-take relationship with the various elements you have to deal with. You attack enemies to raise VP and get stronger, but higher VP means you'll heal less from items and makes it slightly harder to know how wounded an enemy is to give yourself the opportunity to inhale them. If you take too many hits, your VP drops and now you're barely doing any damage and need to switch to magic or sub-weapons. Knowing how your sword swings and how the lock-on mechanics work are also essential to survival, and can be probably the most annoying part because of how finicky they are. Especially in this one puzzle where you need to strike 2 crystals with your sword to match up their colors. Now timing these hits is challenging in and of itself, but when the hit detection makes your sword pass right through the damn crystal, it's a crapshoot to even be able to complete the puzzle. I haven't quite figured out how I feel about the level layouts. On the one hand, they're super tedious to go through, just long hallways with a few respawning enemies and a ton of small rooms that vary in interesting things to see and collect. On the other hand though, the art direction is really good and some of the areas have a good atmosphere. I had heard the game was developed in conjunction with the movie they were releasing, and the different ideas were carried over to pretty good effect. Sometimes though, the areas are just hard to get around, looking very samey and having some confusing perspectives at times where it's easy to miss items or even doors. Did I mention that there's platforming in this game? Tank control platforming with fixed camera angles is a hoot, let me tell you. You can definitely struggle to line up proper angles or even jump and land in the right places. Thankfully, you're only ever required to do this to progress a few times. Most of the stuff you platform for is just extra items that you probably already have an abundance of anyway. I think the main problem looming over this game is just the key and door hunting loop. Whenever you're making good progress and seeing the story unfold, it's a great time. You'll hit a puzzle or a cutscene and be like, oh, that was neat. However, most of the time when it comes to progressing, you're just simply looking for a key or a door that said key opens. Or you unlocked a bunch of doors with a computer and now you're just running around looking for doors that unlocked so you can get to the next item to open another door. This is pretty par for the course as far as survival horror games go, but in this game specifically, it feels very dragged out due to the linearity of the hallways you traverse and the respawning enemies you need to fight with super janky combat. It's kind of rough at times. Overall though, I'd say this game is worth a play for sure. There's something about it that has this endearing early anime quality. The voice acting is surprisingly decent for the time, and there's some really neat looking FMVs as well as some pretty good music. There's even choices that you can make throughout the story that will affect your ending and the way certain events play out. I think what will make or break the experience for you is how everything controls. You either learn to adapt or you have an awful time. The one thing that got me the most was that circle is examined outside of the menus, but inside of the menus, X is the confirm button. So a lot of times I would accidentally quit out of a menu when I meant to save, or back out of a puzzle when I was trying to flip a switch, and it got super annoying. It makes sense why this game has such a bad reputation, as the initial hurdle is hard to get over, but underneath, there's something that might be worth checking out if you're in the mood for it and willing to put in a little bit of work.